I'm going to mute Tyler's mic. All right. We're live. Today we're going to talk about variation in training. But before we do that, I sent it out in our Slack last night to all our athletes because we were watching Mr. Dave Castro on the Weekend Review. And if you didn't watch the YouTube Weekend Review, I'm just going to tell you what he says. Last night he talked about how he had a question about how the open doesn't matter. Gets those questions a lot. And he said in very ambiguous ways, and then followed it up with a final statement of our team has solutions to fix that problem. So, and he ahead of time says, hey, like, yeah, the open doesn't matter right now, but it will. Mm-hmm. So they're, going to create solutions. I think the easiest one is just having the open, whatever you get in the open is what you go into with quarters, and then it resets at semifinals to 0. That would be the easiest solution that I think they could do. He had somebody in the comments said like, oh, let's say you get 5th place in open workout 1, you're going to get a 5th place ranking in like workout 0 of semifinals. So like your open workout will dictate a subset number of points going into semifinals, which I don't really like that solution, but like Dave laughed about it and thought that was a good idea. So like, I don't know if they have really narrowed in on what they're going to do, but they have a solution to make the open matter for these type athletes, whatever that means. But what it means to us as coaches is that, okay, you're going to have to train that skill set, because we do know that it is a different skill set than the quarterfinals athletes. You even look at the team workouts that just came out, and yeah, on paper, they're fun and they're easy to do. But like we did, I mean, I sucked. I died on Heather, but we did the first team workout, the burpees, 2-minute interval, burpee over the bar, front squat, AMRAP ring muscle ups. And I did it at 135 because I knew the 185 would just fucking smoke me. And like, that's the thing, like that right there creates a limitation, because the 50 front squats at 185 would be a lot. If I was to look at that workout and go, okay, this is as an athlete where I would suffer in that workout. Well, that's the first step. I'd probably have to go back. I would go back and say, look, I need to be doing front squats out of the rack because my strength endurance is bad. So I would do absolute strength because you need to do that. But then I would also run some sessions and maybe a progression where I'm doing 185 front squats for 10 reps. Now I know that would specifically train me for the 185, but I think that would be advantageous as like a bandwidth of loading. Because let's say the loading was 205 or the loading was 155. I think that 185 could be a sweet spot of training to do 10 reps, rest 90 seconds, 10 reps, rest 90 seconds. And let's say I can only do 3 sets there at that. Then next week, try to do 4 and get to that 50 rep range. And I think that would be pretty good. And if I could do the 10 reps for 5 sets and 90 seconds, that'd be really good. Another way that I could probably train that would be German volume training. That would then be a variable to me. It's 100 reps though, but still it would give me all of that bandwidth to do, those front squats. And I could do a 10 by 10 reps, 10 sets, German front squat, volume training, starting at the percentage base and building from there every week, and do that throughout the year. That might be a really good staple of training for me. So then I could do that front squat workout, because that's what really ate me up.
I was going to say, like, what do you think, like, who do you think that that's appropriate for? Right. Because I think that, if somebody's like hearing this, right, and they're like not as trained as you, and then they try to go and do a 10 by 10 front squat.
Well, yeah. So that's like
right.
We're kind of going backwards in my explanation, but it was good. Cause like, yes, I'm not there. They may not be as trained as me. I think this is for people who have a one-on-one coach or someone who is really diving into their training and want to get better within their training, and have specific goals with their training. And then we'll get back to the Dave thing, because he also talks about this in that weekend review, having specific goals or competitive goals. And so like, this is good too. He does talk about specific goals and competitive goals. You don't have to be competitive to have specific goals. I think that's something I've talked about with our members in our affiliate. recently a lot is like, you could not be good at CrossFit, but have a specific goal of like, I want to do a half marathon, or I want to do a powerlifting meet, or I want to just get better at my snatch, or I want to, or I'm doing quarterfinals and I do this team workout with Heather and I get crushed in the front squat. I like playing CrossFit, so I don't want to get crushed in the front squat. So I'm going to build a specific goal around like when front squat bias workouts come up, because they'll come up. Because even in 2014, there was front squat, bar facing burpee, handstand push-up workout that it was really fucking hard. And like that workout, if it ever came out again, because they do test retest, I would also have a problem with that. There's the front squat workout with handstand walks from last year's quarters. I would also have a problem with that, is challenging for me. Luckily, I got to do the Masters quarterfinals, so it didn't matter. I didn't do that workout.
Right.
But like, those are the specific things that even Dave in his weekend review talked about. Like, if you're trying to get specific in your training and you have a specific outcome goal within CrossFit or other things, and you're going to use CrossFit to build those other goals, you need to specifically train for that stuff. Yeah. And he talks about that, which I'm so glad he did, because typically they're always saying, just do the hour class. Like, most CrossFit coaches, I think, are, I don't want to say brainwashed, but so convinced, because the narrative is told,
right,
you got to do just an hour long class. You're going to get so good doing an hour long class. You will get good. And Dave covers that in his weekend review. He's like, generally, someone who has an hour, your mom or dad, you have no specific goals. You're not trying to be competitive. You just want to be fit, healthy, and capable. The hour long class is good. I 100% agree with that.
Right.
Wholeheartedly. The hour long class at any CrossFit gym is what you need to change your life, your health, your well-being, your capability. It'll be great. Sign up. If they have a 10-year membership, sign up for their 10-year membership and just get your butt in 3 to 5 times a week and get after it. But you will get stopped, in that CrossFit training, or you will get stopped in like a marathon training or a Tough Mudder training. And Dave talks about how you want to specialize in that and look at it and find a coach and like really get after, that specificity of getting better. Like, if you're not good at pull-ups, you got to talk to a coach and build that in appropriately with the rest of your training. Because he does go over that of like, if you're a competitive athlete, because the question the guy posed on his weekend review is, should I do a morning endurance session and then an afternoon, like class, like strength and metabolic conditioning session? And it's cool. Dave doesn't go into it, but he's like, yeah, like, if he basically says yes, if you are trying to be competitive. He does laugh and talk about how like most people don't have the time to do that. And that's true. But if like you have a specific goal and that's really what you want the outcome to be, doing that and separating those sessions to make sure that you have a concurrent training method, and you're doing your endurance by itself and then you're protecting your strength, or you flip that because strength is the weakness and you do strength first and then you do your endurance secondary in the day. Great. And I'm glad that, he came out and said that. I don't think it gets said enough at level 1, level 2 in the CrossFit journal. It's there in the journal, but it's minimal.
Well, I think it's just protecting whatever the weakness is, right? Because if you are a strength limited athlete and then you come in, and I think you were saying this last night when we were watching it, was like, he was kind of alluding to it, but he wasn't really getting after like the adaptations that you're blunting, or that you're not by actually trying, like, by needing to like do it in the morning and the afternoon, right? Like, actually separating enough time and hours in between those sessions so that your body has enough time to adapt to whatever they're trying to adapt to, whether you're strength limited or endurance limited or whatever. So I know he wasn't actually like saying that, but you're like, oh, I wish he would say that, right?
Yeah. I mean, he did say it in his own words and like the CrossFit words, right? He says like, you can't put enough intensity into those sessions if you do them together.
Right.
And that's true. Like, that is true. We agree with that, but and I know he knows this, he just doesn't want to waste his time with it because they're so, I want to say, minimalist in like their training approach, which is good, or reductionist in explanation, because you don't need to explain a ton. Like, I think we over explain a lot to our GPP members, the people that come into an hour-long class, which I love doing because it helps them get educated and it inspires them to want to do more, and they feel supported, and all of those things are true. And I just like to talk about the stuff, which is great. So like, everybody's getting a need met. But it would be cool if they were like, hey, like if Dave came out and said like, yeah, you're blunting this strength adaptation because endurance does hinder this. But if they started saying that, it would kind of muddle their whole thing of, jack of all trades, crossbar times multiple domains. And it would be hard to explain to people who don't have a huge base of education of why that is. It's the same reason why they explain, the phosphagen, glycolytic, and aerobic systems, and they basically show you the graph, and it almost looks like they're three independent systems that don't work together all the time. But if you've taken a kinesiology class or gone to school for exercise science, you know that all of those work together all the time.
Right.
And they don't cover that in the level 1. And it's like, but it's because they just want you to understand these like
concepts.
Yeah. And like, they don't need or have to give you a deeper understanding of that to come in and teach a CrossFit class of like knowing this is an endurance day, this is a strength day, this is a glycolytic day. Like that is enough information for CrossFit coaches who don't want to get any more education to be very effective in coaching people inside of a class. Yeah. And it's neat, but I love that weekend review. That's probably the best weekend review he's had for me, like bias wise, because he talks about programming, he talks about how you have specific goals, and those take specific training things within CrossFit and CrossFit like methods. And he doesn't lean into like, oh, you only need the hour class to get good. Like, no, you need more than the hour to get good. You can get good over a long duration by taking the hour class. You can change your health and fitness and become very, very capable with the hour class. I don't want to like say that and people think like, I got to train more. No, you don't need to unless your goal is XYZ and you have that time to train. Don't take something else away from your life to do that. And so that's what's really neat. But yeah, then going back to like, evaluating what he said about the open matters, 2 quarters, and they're going to figure that out. Well, like our point of me looking at that quarterfinal team workout that we did, like we got into the 4th round and I was just dying. And I was like, Heather, go on without me.
He literally shook his hand.
I was like, go do the squats. I can't do the squats. So I like took the round off, which, in that workout, you don't want to do that obviously, because like you want to try and get fitter, but because the nature of the workout, your score was ring muscle ups. I just didn't do any ring muscle ups that round. So I effectively got a 0. Like, I know you're supposed to do it synchro with the person, but we were just training and it was good for Heather to get the practice. But either way, it's just like, even if we both took that round off, we just get a 0. And then, cause I did the 5th round with her and then we got more reps, and that's totally fine to do. But it did highlight, that squat endurance limitation, because the burpees were fine. And like, I was even pushing the pace on the burpees and I felt totally fine in the burpees. I felt fine in the ring muscle ups. It was just every time when we're doing the squats, like I was getting lightheaded, my heart rate started to spike up. And it's because that's a hard movement for me to do that many repetitions under that amount of intensity. And it just got to me.
Yeah.
And so looking at that, like as a coach, if we see an athlete have that issue, those are the things that we go, oh, okay, here's the issue. So we would start with a basic progression to build that out. And then, looking at back now, because I think we're getting out of the season for a lot of people. Next week is quarters. And a lot of people's season is going to be over and they're not going to train for the next stage, excuse me. And we'd have to look at these things as a coach. Like, what was the limitation? Where did they falter in either the open or quarterfinals? Because that's all that really matters for the sport. And then look at those characteristics of like, what is going to be the change there? And using myself as an example, because it's real time right now. Like, I did pretty well in the open. I was sick going into workout 3. So I'm just going to like either retest that workout or just dump it all together, because I know I'm good at bar muscle-ups, chest to bar, and thrusters. Like, it's not, I paced it out. I was dying because I was sick a week ahead and didn't train at all. So those are things also too to take into consideration when you're talking to your coach, is like, when we're looking at this in evaluation, to be like, okay, you were good here, you sucked here, this needs to improve. Take those other things, like, were you sick? Were you high stressed? Did you work a lot? Did you not work a lot? Like, what was going on outside of the training, outside of the gym? Because those impact performances as well, even though people try to think they don't, they do. And then we make the evaluation and go into progression. And so like, it's going to, because Dave said that, everyone and people listening to this, you need to look at your open performances and you need to look at your quarterfinals performances. So this is also a good thing to do too, because I know some people, like, even if you're at the bottom of the barrel of the open or quarters, like, this should be the only thing you're focusing on. If your goal is to participate and play CrossFit, whether that's local competitions or big competitions or whatever, I think this is all you should have your mind on. If you are, let's say 25% cutoff was 5,000 to make an easy number, and you were 5,000 or 4,999. Again, this is the only thing you should be doing and focusing on is prepping for quarters and doing quarters and seeing where you fall and using it as a test, because whether people realize this or not, the testing body of the open, quarters, semis, and even the games, all these local comps and bigger comps, they look to those things and they steal programs, they steal ideas. Like we've had the ramp, right? The ramp came about in 2017 for teams and individuals, or 2018 maybe. I'm not sure. Either way, no, 2017 was the first year. Came about. They got it's not called the Iron Games anymore, but it used to be called the Iron Games. They had the ramp there. There's other comps that get these ramps, and you got to do the handstand walks on the ramps. Crash has the ramps. You know, the sleds in the games, the odd objects, the yoke carries, like all of these things. Local comps start doing it. So if you want to get better at these local comps and do these in swimming, biking, you know, all that stuff, freestanding handstands, NCC 2 years ago, freestanding handstand hold, because it was in the what's it called, the COVID qualifier for the CrossFit Games, the stage 1 freestanding handstand holds. The NCC did that in, I think, 2021 or 2022.
They had us do backwards handstand walks this year.
Well, yeah. But like, you know what I mean? So like they're looking at what's happening, and all of these comps, I could go down the list, like Metcon Rush, like everybody, they all do it. They all do the stuff that they see from the top down method. So if we know that, if you don't know that as an athlete, you should know that now, and we're going to continue to talk to you about it. But then going back to it, the open and quarters should be your, how do you say it? Litmus test? Is that how you say it? Litmus test. There we go. That's how you pronounce it. We, what was it? Amortize was the other thing we had an argument about how to say it this morning.
What? Was I in on that?
No, you weren't in on that. It's just how to say words.
Oh.
You know, words are hard. Pronunciation. Anyways, so looking at the open, looking at quarters and evaluating yourself. And even, you know, after you do quarters, let's say you're middle of the pack or you're at the top or you're bottom barrel. Some of you guys should go into a little bit of a deload, and unless you make semis, then you obviously not. But if you go into a deload, you know, it'd be fun is like, look at the team quarter final workouts to still give yourself some intensity and maybe do a couple of those, see where you fall with like communication, finding somebody who's of general fitness level with you, which would be cool. That's a good experiment of like, think like, hey, this person, I think they're pretty close in my fitness level. I'm going to partner up with them on Saturday and let's do this team workout and see what we get. Because you might partner up with somebody and then go, oh, wow, I'm not as fit as them. Or conversely, wow, they're not as fit as me, or they struggle with these things. And that's also a cool learning too, because you start to understand a bigger breadth of like fitness range where people are at. It's kind of neat to do. I think that is like the only, and it's not the only, but in my opinion, I feel like that's the only value of doing team workouts is like discovering people's fitness range and your own fitness range.
Yeah.
Other than that, like you could do interval sessions by yourself. Like once you get pretty good at the movements, synchronizing them is not that hard. Like I know people freak out about it. I don't think it's that hard.
Yeah.
And coaching teams, like they figure it out like that. It's just like easy for them. But you know, I guess there's like comfortability and mindset around it, like making sure you know what's going on.
Well,
Also,
I think
wait, hold on real quick. We got 5 people watching. If you guys are watching, comment in the chat, please, so we know who you are. Okay, go ahead, Heather.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think another benefit of team is just that added level of like stress for yourself, because you don't want to like underperform for them. Right. Like I think you were just saying, I mean, I just think that sometimes it brings other people up, whether you're the weaker athlete or the stronger athlete. Like it might be like obvious who that person is, but usually when I'm doing team workouts, I want to go harder than I would if it was just me.
Okay. Yeah. Intensity, right? Could drive. You're externally motivated. So then that helps you versus being like really intrinsically motivated, which a lot of like individual people are. Yeah. So you could utilize those. The main point is to be fun, experiment with yourself. Those workouts are tough and challenging and a lot of good repetitions, and like just to give yourself a little bit of a deload while you give yourself time to talk to your coach and replan and look at what the progressions are going to be
Yeah.
moving forward for training. So like using all of that, you know, I know it's like 20 minutes of talk of like what Dave said, where the sport's going. These are the things that we evaluate to continue to coach people as successfully as possible, you know, keep the ear to the ground. And if the open is going to matter in whatever way they're going to make it matter, and quarters obviously matters, and you're training, you want to play this game and you want to play in CrossFit, whether you're tippity top or you're, in my analogy earlier, 4,999th, you should be looking at like, how am I going to change myself to be more successful in the open? How am I going to change myself to be more successful in quarters, with a greater context of like, those aren't always the same workouts. So you got to look at characteristics, which is going to bring us into our conversation about variation in training. But what are the characteristics that hold you back? And for me, we identified already that like squat endurance, strength endurance specifically, at a threshold of volume, because clearly I got through 30 reps and was like, I'm chilling. And then it was like 40. No, I cannot do this. I am done. Go without me.
I wouldn't say you were chilling through those 30 reps though.
Come on. I was not. I was
Just
not
saying.
chilling.
I mean, you did them, but
I wasn't
you were
chilling.
not
It was
chilling.
hard.
You
It
were
was
not chilling.
hard. And one of the rounds, like I was counting and I counted 10 and I dropped the bar. And Heather's like, it was like the second round or something. And Heather was like, that was 9, but whatever.
Well, because you were already like, get me out from underneath this bar. You were already running to the ring.
I was running the ring
well,
because I thought it was 10. That was an honest mistake. Okay.
I mean, that's fine. It was just funny because I couldn't pull you back. You were already 10 feet away from the bar.
Yeah. Good transitions, you know? Because ring muscles are my jam. I got up there and was doing like 8s.
Yeah.
Yeah. The barbell though. Yeah. So looking at that and going, okay, squats obviously an issue for me. So
which I think it's interesting because you actually said that when you were talking about 24.3, how you were good at thrusters. So, and it made me think about that because you're like, oh, I'm good at thrusters, but then you have problems with high volume front squats. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, it's because I can take the bar off my chest and breathe.
Okay.
I think that's what it is. I really do think like Tyler wants to weigh in on that, but I think that's what it is. I think because I can take the bar off my chest and then it goes back down, it's not sitting like near your carotid artery the whole time.
But you don't think that it's like quad muscle fatigue that's breaking down, or is more aerobic for you?
It's aerobic for me. It's like we'd have to like run some tests of like blood pressure, but it'd be interesting to like take my blood pressure seated, do a set of 10 out of the rack, take my blood pressure right away. And that would give us an indicator of like, is it ramping up my blood pressure so much that, which it does, it will ramp, but it's like how much, right? Then the problem is we don't have a control. We don't have like a twin of me that is not having this issue with squats, but we could take someone who doesn't have this type of issue and run the same test and kind of get an idea and be like, okay, well, their blood pressure only went up by this percentage and your blood pressure went up by this percentage. So there is probably a blood pressure issue that is like just driving you through the roof, that is then making your heart rate increase because it needs to move the blood around faster because it's trying to keep you at homeostatic set point. Right. We won't go into all this, but that's how you could look at it. I'm assuming based on how I feel. So my reported sensation, and I could be wrong in that, right? And that's okay. But like you have, as a coach, like if I was the athlete telling myself as the coach, like if this was one of my athletes going, you know, I just feel like I dropped the bar and I'm just like so gassed from that. But okay, it's like a muscle endurance thing that is getting hindered by blood pressure. But then like you're saying, it's like, okay, well, we evaluate the thruster and it's like, you know, even those thrusters, those 7 thrusters, I still had to go 4-3. So it's not like it was 7 unbroken or anything. Sure. So that's still a problem area that I could work on. And then the argument is like, okay, if let's say the athlete comes in and goes, I feel like my squat is the issue of the strength endurance. I need to do like, I put forward to the coach, I need to do this German volume training. I would look at it and go, okay, maybe let's start with just 5 sets and not do the 10 sets. And we'll build in sets over time and see how you adapt. And then if your thrusters get better because of that squat training, then that's like the variation of movement, right? You may not have to do thrusters because the front squat is the problem area and you just focus more on front squats and variations in volume and loading parameters to build up, you know, these other things: front squats, front rack lunges, dumbbell lunges, thrusters, wall balls. All of those things will improve because you've now pinpointed this issue in the front squat because of the team workout we did, because you're much better at the front squat than I am and had no issue there, and then conversely, like you're bad at ring muscle ups and improving.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, where does Heather need to spend her time? Right. So, oh man, there's a lot there in that evaluation of the workout, because like, if we talk about one-on-one training and one-on-one coaching, it's like, most people want to get a good score. Most people are like, what's the score to get, blah, blah, blah. Right. I'm looking at the workouts for individuals and the people I coach, and even myself, of like, where was the problem of why I either needed to slow down or I got stuck or whatever, versus like, oh, what was our score? Like, I couldn't tell you how many ring muscles we got.
I can tell you roughly.
I could tell you roughly,
either.
But I was counting my sets to know what my capacity is. But like, I wasn't like at the end, like, oh yeah, guys, we got 112 between the four of us. We're ready for it. I wasn't like, not even, it was like, oh shit, man.
In all
I got
fairness, I don't
problem.
think the team was counting that reps either.
No. Well,
I'm just kidding.
The other half of our team, we got, Sophia got stuck up front squat. Same problem I have.
Okay. Well, once you told me to go on without me, I stopped counting. I was like, okay.
We don't need to count this anymore. But yeah, so it's like evaluating that and looking at those things and then pulling into training. Like, how do you train that? Because I think, I offered up the front squat doing German volume training. And I think a lot of people would get relative percent of 1RM load could be the part. Actually, yeah, Tristan, I would look there first with athletes. For me, I've found over the years that that's not the problem. I can't keep moving the percent of load. Like, I get to like 70, 75%. If I go beyond that, I can't do a lot of volume. So it would be building up the resiliency within that volume range. It's not an issue of me being like overly weak relative to the load that's asked. But yes, you would look at that first. He's right. If an athlete like front squats 105 out of the rack and you ask them to do 125 pound front squat from the floor, obviously that's not going to work out really well. Or even like a better example of like they front squat 155 and then now they got to do 50 reps at 125. That's going to be a problem because their 1RM is so low relative to the ask and the demand of that front squat. So the first place you would start is you'd want to drive up their front squat. So then that percentage decreases and the demand then becomes less than what it is. But if you do that, and you know that the percentage, let's say, is 50% of their front squat, and they struggle with that front squat, which in this scenario it was less than 50% of my front squat. That's the problem, is like the endurance of it all.
Yeah.
But yeah. What do you say? Just too damn tall. Yeah, that could be it too. Anyways, no, you could train it. Doesn't matter that I'm tall. Yeah. So then moving forward of that, like, let's just stay in the vein of front squats and talk about like movement variation. Cause I think this was something that Training Think Tank talked about on their education podcast that I thought was really cool. And I get this a lot. Cause like most to all of us one-on-one coaches have gone through OPEX CCP or some variation of the OPEX style training, because we've found that it does work right within this sport. And it is very good for non-CrossFitters as well. I think, as far as like, we look at people coming in now, I watch the Roadhouse with Jake Gyllenhaal, his like training that he did for that movie. And I was like, oh, they're doing CrossFit. Like, they're just doing a version of CrossFit to get that body aesthetic for that movie. If you haven't seen that movie, it's pretty good. Harley played it when they were here. It was nice. I enjoyed it. But prior to that, I watched the YouTube of them doing the workouts and the training program that they're doing. And yeah, there's some specific stuff with like rotational punching and things like that. But primarily it was like intensity, variation, and movement. And I look at that and I go, okay, so you could, if you use like the OPEX model and CrossFit, you could probably train any person in any sport using the principles that are set forth in those educational formats, and then lots of experience. And I think that's why I can watch something like that and go, okay, yeah, I can see the translation because I have so much experience. But you have to have the experience working with those athletes, and a lot of them over time, to build those connections. And it is important because it's a variation, right? So like, example of the front squat. What variations are there of the front squat that we have in just CrossFit? A competitive CrossFit setting, we're talking about 1RM front squat out of the rack. Hey, what's up? Then from that 1RM front squat, like what are all the variations that we could train to improve? Let's just start with that 1RM front squat. What do you guys got?
Well, I immediately think about single leg work. So Bulgarian split squats,
Okay.
lunging, things like that, step ups.
Yeah. So you could overload even front rack lunges with a barbell.
Yeah.
Go work on the front rack, sandbag, lunge, holding in the front rack.
Yeah.
Obviously dumbbell, kettlebell. What else?
I don't know. Wall balls.
Yeah.
Squats.
Well, no, stay with the single leg because that was your first one.
Yeah.
We'll get to the other stuff.
Yeah. Well, single leg, because I mean, I think that
front rack step ups on a box.
Yeah, I think I said that, but yeah.
Yeah. So like those things, like what people don't understand is like you might have a front squat problem, and you could do front squats, obviously. And then from there, Heather's approach would be, okay, we're going to do front squats and we're going to do these heavy weighted, variations of lunging with a front rack bias.
Yeah. I think sometimes too, when people have really weak front squats, I mean, it could be they just haven't been training enough, but it also could be like a unilateral strength issue.
It could, but it's more about the variation. I mean, that's getting specific. Let's assume this is an able-bodied CrossFitter who can do all the things and is just slower at fitness.
Yeah.
And wants to do better in quarters in the open. Like, yeah, you could get in the weeds of like, oh yeah, we got blah 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 adductors, this that. You could argue Copenhagen planks would improve your front squat. They would, but I just want movement variation that resembles the front squat. Because that's what I think people don't understand is when we talk about progression within, because the OPEX model or a standard strength and conditioning model would be you front squat every week on a Tuesday or whatever. And you just go 70%, 75%, 80%, 85%, 90%, retest, deload, do it again. And that's fine for untrained athletes, I think, or people who haven't been in a CrossFit gym doing a bunch of strength work. But I think what happens is we do with our coaching, because I get this a lot, and this is why I wanted to talk about it, was a misunderstanding because people go, well, it just seems like a lot of variation. I'm not on any progression. And, I don't quite get it. It's like, well, first of all, like front squatting and let's say kettlebell box step up, those are the same thing. Now, obviously, the loading parameters, the intensity of the load is going to be very different, but those work the same thing. That gets the same stimulus, as CrossFit coaches like to say. The stimulus is to stimulate your body to improve the front squat. That's something also we could talk about, is like the stimulus of stuff. But from there, like understanding that there is structure and in variation, there is progression in variation, right? Because like if you could easily overload somebody on a front rack box step up, but not essentially, over time you can't overload that step up anymore. Like you could take really strong ass people and like you're only gonna, like, unless you take a barbell, it's gonna get real sketchy to do a 20-inch box step up with 400 pounds on their front rack.
Right.
Like you're not gonna do that, So variation movements do have their limitation within, other parameters. So you could also then, do other things for that person. Let's say this person has a 400-pound front squat and you want to have movement variation, but you still want to keep up their front squat without front squatting. What would you do? For example, for the people watching.
I fall in line with Heather with a lot. Like I'm a big fan of like single leg strength will always translate into double leg strength more than double leg transfers to single leg. So like if they're front squatting 400 pounds and like I want to get a better front squat, like cool, we'll front squat. But like she said, like all of those variations, even up to like I've been using landmine stuff for people lately of like front loading a landmine. And I think that works really well because my favorite way to front load is 2 kettlebells personally, but for variation, but you can get pretty heavy with a landmine too. So I think landmine, reverse lunges, landmine, Bulgarian split squats are nasty. So stuff like that is where I tend to go.
Yeah. And like, you could go a different way too, of like, you're going to do that. But then also like you could go, oh, we're going to progress a hamstring curl. Like you literally could go get a CrossFitter to go into like who front squats 400 pounds. They're still going to front squat. They're still going to do a single leg work, and you're going to get them to max out like prone hamstring curl, because that's going to help them decelerate barbells better.
Yeah.
And which is going to improve their front squat. And so that's the thing, like a hamstring curl. I'm not saying you should do this because it's not compound multi-joint. It's not functional. It's not a big bang for your buck unless you like doing those things. But that's what I mean, is like the variation of movements can mean progression, is what I'm trying to get at. It's like, you don't always have to front squat to get better at your front squat. And I think that's a problem within CrossFit and just training in general. I think people for far too long, when you've tapped out your front squat, when I say a person with a 400-pound front squat, they've tapped out their front squat. So now you're looking at chinks in the chain, to Tristan's point, like I could get stronger in my front squat, and that could improve this issue I have with the front squats in the workouts. But I think it would be a better bang for my buck to use the variation of German volume training and work on strength endurance. And then also, yes, add in some like single leg stuff, or even take the method of German volume training and go, I'm going to do German volume training week 1, front squat. I'm going to do German volume training week 2, front rack kettlebell step ups. I'm going to take German volume training week 3, heavy wall ball. Then I'm going to go back to the front squat week 4 and see if I got better at the front squat, to give myself variation. What that now does, I can even do lunges with German volume training and do walking lunges. What that now did in a 5-week period is got me better in constantly varied functional movement and exposure to things that you're going to see in the testing body: wall balls, front squats, lunges, box step up, box jump overs, right? And that's what I really want people to understand, of like variation and progression, because no one makes, in my experience, I've worked with a ton of people, the athletes I work with don't often make these connections. And they're like, well, I need to get better at snatch, so I need to snatch a lot. Okay, we do need to snatch. You're correct. But could dumbbell snatches improve it? Could kettlebell swings improve it? Could going to a strongman and doing keg toss over a bar improve the snatch? Oh yeah. If we're talking about this snatch, power, strength, and speed. If we're talking about mobility, obviously you got to specifically do mobility. But if we're talking about the explosive hip drive, you're having trouble with that, and just pulling the bar up and getting underneath, you could do a lot of different things that are variation to improve that snatch. That doesn't have to be you snatching all the time. And I think knowing that variation importance is really important, of like, the variation is progression, but it has to be variation within the line of thinking of the movement. So like, what else? If we're doing front squat and building that up, so we got single leg work, lots of different stuff that we suggested. What else could you do to improve that front squat?
I know for me specifically, like the front rack itself is difficult. So improving upper back strength, just doing like heavy front rack holds, of getting there, so that isn't such a limiter in the squat itself.
Heavy chest supported reverse flies with dumbbells will improve your front squat. That variation of movement, because like Tyler's saying, like there are a lot of people who have upper thoracic, like scapular retraction issues, squeezing, their back together to hold that chest open position. Well, yeah, chest supported reverse flies will really help that. 3-point rows with a dumbbell improve that. And like, you'll have athletes in general pop and one-on-ones who will like go too light on those things for accessories, but then they complain that they can't hold a barbell in their front rack. They won't really dive in and understand, like, do the things with intentionality of like either asking a question like, what is this improving? Most of the time people want to know how well they're doing. And that's fine. I get that because it's a performance based sport. But I would like more often than not athletes going, is this helping XYZ? And then really knowing what their problem area is and going, okay, is this helping my front squat, coach? I would love that question over like, was that a good score?
Right.
I mean, right now in the season, as we are coming out of the season for 99% of people, we got to switch those questions. Because right now it's okay to be like, was that a good score? Like quarters is coming up. Ask me that question all day. But as we get out of the season, I would love to hear like, okay, I've done an evaluation myself. Here's what I think. Here's what I need to get better at. And then we talk about it. And then we create a plan and we start doing stuff. Then when we're doing stuff, you go, okay, cool. I don't quite understand why bench supported reverse flies are helping me. What are these for in my training? Cool. They're for your front rack. Or cool. They're actually for your posterior delt and your pulling power and then rotator cuff strength, because it also does that. So it's so interesting to me when we talk about variation in movement and progression, because like that's a huge leap of improving your front squat, but it does improve your front squat, which is crazy.
Yeah.
And I feel like only us coaches kind of know that or have this conversation. That was the point of like all of this realistically, is to get that far away from the front squat to show you how it does translate over. And there's so many things that do that. And the problem there that with it being so many things that do that is going back to what I said about Dave and being specific in your training and having specific goals. If you don't narrow it in, right? Because like you could not have a weak upper back issue for your front squat and do chest supported reverse flies. It will still get you stronger. It will still improve you as an athlete, which is crazy to think about, because I think a lot of people don't realize that this thing that we do is fitness. It's bodybuilding. It's changing your biological state through tissues, cardiovascular stuff. And that training is not like playing the piano. Like you can't just like do a bunch of reps all the time. So there's very minimal practice that you get, right? There's minimal bullets that you can use every day. So let's say you got to get better at ring muscle ups. It would be better for you to do ring muscle ups than doing bench supported reverse flies, because the bench supported reverse flies are going to fatigue you for any subsequent ring muscle ups you're going to do later that week. But people don't also understand that. But now if you have an issue with front squats and ring muscle ups, it's like, well, what's the priority? Because again, you could do front squats, you could do the variations, you could do reverse flies, you could do ring muscle ups, you could do strict pull-ups, you could do all of these things because they encompass those movements, and they are variation of the movement and translation into getting better. But again, you only have so many bullets, so you're going to fatigue so quickly that you're actually not going to get better at anything because you're not being directed in the thing. Yeah. And that's kind of our argument for one-on-one, is like, we're here to direct you and help you figure out these problems for yourself through non-subjective information. So like the open and quarters is very objective, or doing a qualifier and then doing a competition is very objective. And then you using subjective evaluation based on objective things. I couldn't do the front squat in the workout we did. Okay, that's objective. I couldn't do it. Subjectively, it's like, oh, I felt this way, right? Because going to Tristan's point, build the one arm front squat, see if that works. Well, yeah, let's try it. And then I spend time doing that. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. Try German volume training. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. But then you got to reevaluate it at the end. Mm-hmm. So like the test retest with CrossFit, maybe Heather, gears up and does the workout with me again, so we can retest it after I go through a cycle of training that has a lot of variation and focuses on the weak point. It's pretty in depth. Like it gets crazy when I start talking about it. I'm like, yeah. And that's just one. We're talking about front squat.
Right.
Oh boy, you got to help us.
Right.
But that's where like, I do think broadly this answer, like that whole rant and explanation does answer why there are a lot of people in CrossFit that are not getting as good as they want to get. And I don't think you could take the leap into other sports this way, because there's only, if you're shooting basketball, like,
There's more specificity.
yeah, you're just shooting the ball, right? So like, yeah, there's variation in where you're shooting it from, how far away you are, like those types of things. And then you could add in the variables of like defense and dribbling and all that other stuff. But like, if you're just bad at shooting, you could just shoot the ball a million times and like not get overly fatigued where you can't shoot the ball anymore.
But you also know that that's what's going to be asked of you, right?
Well, that's true too.
Right.
Well, that's the point of variation in a training, right? So like, if you have a front squat problem, we do the front squat week 1, then we do step ups and we do wall balls and we do all this stuff. Plus we do what, like Tyler's saying, accessories to that front squat to build up the front squat. And that takes up like a whole training day, because you're going to go front squat. Then maybe you do some CP battery on the front squat. Like for me, like if I'm not doing a German volume training, I take Tristan's approach and I'm going to build up my 1RM. So I do that first. Then secondarily, I do some repeat efforts of front squats or wall balls or dumbbell lunges or box step overs at intensity relative and volume that is going to give me the stimulus of feeling the way I felt in that workout under heavy duress, trying to maintain my recycling of energy and output. And then I might do for my adductors some Copenhagen planks, some movement work, some mobility, and maybe like some, I don't know, natural knee extensions. So then that way I'm working on my quads and my adductors, or I'm doing prone banded hamstring curls, or some reverse like eccentric box step downs to build up my hamstrings and my glutes or whatever, right? So like the structures, independent structures of that movement. And that's ABC for the day. And then I might do some conditioning. I'm at D, maybe an E later on. That's my whole training day. And then I could go into how if you miss that training day or you move those pieces around, you've really messed everything up.
Go there.
No, I don't want to. Just don't do it. If you have A, B, C, and D, and you got to break it up, make sure you go A, B, break it up, C, D. Or you go A, B, C, break it up, then the D later.
Well, if you miss D and you can't make it up 3 days later, 2 days later, it's gone.
It's gone. Well, Dave Castor talks about that. He legit says you have to watch all 6 videos, but in the program design for functional movement within CrossFit, and this is a 13-year-old video, and I think it holds true. You can't make up fitness. Again, I think that's a hard thing. I was talking to somebody about this the other day about how like, all right, actually yesterday I was talking to Dan in class about how like most people think because the way our world works, 7-day week. Well, time is on a continuum. Time is not within 7 days.
Right.
We've just made that construct because it helps us be organized. And like I work Monday through Friday. If like you have a normal 9 to 5, you're not like a shift worker or other things. But like realistically, your body and your training is from birth to death. There is no months, weeks, like years. It just helps you keep track as a human being. It's what we've created. So what I was saying is that for a general exerciser, it would actually be beneficial to work out 2 days, rest 2 days, work out 2 days, rest 2 days, work out 2 days, and keep that going for however you're just general exercise. Because over the course of a year, you're going to get a lot of training in because you're not confined. But then Dan responds with, well, that would mean like my training days would switch and my schedule for work and things I'd have to like reschedule every 2 days and figure out like when I'm going to work out. He's like, it's just much easier for me to know like, okay, on Tuesdays from work, I can get off at this time and I can go into the gym. I'm like, yeah, exactly. Like that's because of the way the world is, you're not going to create that optimal training schedule for you. Same thing with where Dave talks about that they've seen the best results when you go 3 days, 1 day rest, 3 days, 1 day rest, 3 days, 1 day rest. And where the 3 on, 1 off, 2 on, 1 off came from was that over time through the affiliates and basically surveying people, they realized that going 3 on gave you a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday training schedule, rest Thursday, and then you could train Friday. And some people started with 3 on, 1 off, 1 on, 2 off because they wanted Saturday, Sunday off. And because of the affiliates started making Saturdays really hype and fun, people would bring their friends in the morning, they bring their kids. So then it turned into another day on the weekends. Whereas in the olden days when affiliates started, Greg and Dave talk about this, that no one would come on the weekends because they would spend time with their friends and family.
Yeah.
until the community started growing and your friends and family were doing CrossFit. So Sunday or Saturday morning, you would do CrossFit with your friends and family. So then it became 3 on, 1 off, 2 on, 1 off. And that's where they came up with that training schedule, which is really interesting because it has nothing to do with like building your body. You're creating
Right.
a better system of training. It has everything to do with the nature of humans and our life that we have constructed for our work schedules and everything else. But if you really want to get into it, he talked about how GPP people should go 2, 2, 2, 2. That would be the best. And then elite athletes should go 3, 1, 3, 1, 3, 1 and keep that schedule. I've never tried either of those, so I don't know how they work out, but it's just because until I watched the video and then I looked into it, it just doesn't, I haven't tried it. It makes sense to me as far as like recovery and training, like, cause you could go push, pull, squat, rest, push, pull, squat, rest, push,
Right.
pull, squat, rest. And you're hitting all the functional movements and you're hitting in a, was that 7-day period? You're hitting push twice, pull twice, squat twice. So you're getting exposure to the 3 major movement patterns enough. Whereas like when we go 3 on, 1 off, 2 on, 1 off, it's really hard to structure with enough rest days in between to do
Right.
push pull. Like you're going to have to omit one at some point, because if you have 3 days, you could go push, pull, squat, and then you have a rest. And then you have the 2 days, you can only do push or pull, or you can do squat, pull, or push and squat. And then you have a rest.
Yeah.
So you're omitting one of the things. So you're losing a exposure frequency within that period of training.
Well,
Now that I said that, everyone's gonna be like,
Well, I was
"Oh,
gonna-
I want
I
to
was
do
gonna
the
say-
other training."
but like it's just gonna, like you said, it's on a continuum. So then it's just like that missing day just goes into the next cycle, right?
Yeah, but then if you look at
Or the
strength and
next week,
conditioning and how people adapt, like you need to hit something every 48 hours.
Yeah.
Especially when you're trying to get really good. That's at like the base of like 48 to 72 hours, depending on the person and how they recover. Some people even recover fast enough that every 24 hours you could do something, meaning that like if you train at 7 a.m. in the morning, the next day, 7 a.m., you could hit it again. But that's like really high experienced trainees who recover fast. And typically they're not doing as heavy loads or high intensity. It's more endurance athletes that they found that can recover from that. But like you even look at Olympic weightlifters, they're training, but they don't do any high intensity. So like they snatch, clean and jerk basically every day to a degree, and then squat and pull basically every day, 5 days a week to a degree. There's variation in their training and what they're doing and powers and not powers and technique work and that kind of stuff. But, if you just look at their template, it's snatch, clean and jerk, squat, accessory, snatch, clean and jerk, squat, accessory. The details of that training, makes the variation so that they can recover, the percentages change, so the intensity is variable, like all of those things. And it gets really detailed, but they are snatch, clean and jerking and squatting every day.
Right.
And so they found in those types of populations that you can train that much. But again, they're not doing any intensity. They're not doing Metcons. They're not doing 50 million snatches at 40% of their 1RM. Like it's way too fatiguing to come in the next day and snatch. So like, that's why you wouldn't snatch every day. You might snatch on a Monday and then snatch on a Friday. That's another problem, right? With CrossFit. Like, let's say we have a limited athlete. We're going in the weeds here. This is good. We're going in the weeds right now.
Yeah.
You might have a limited athlete and like Monday they snatch and Friday they snatch, and snatch is their problem. But because of you got to do ring muscle ups, you got to do pull ups, you got to do rope climbs, handstand push ups, handstand walking, pressing, squatting, all this other stuff that you got to do, running, jumping, blah, blah, blah. All the shit that you got to do, you really only have 2 days a week to snatch, even if it's a limitation, unless you're willing to strip all of that stuff out. And again, now we're going into the off season for a lot of people. I would highly recommend people getting their minds right, because once you take stuff away from CrossFitters, they get all tense and tight. No, please don't do it
I'm
to me.
I'm gonna lose this thing.
The amount of people.
Yeah.
Man,
I'm already getting it.
I did 45 minutes of rowing and biking today, and I feel great. Like, I'm like, please, take 15 minutes away. I'd still feel great.
Yeah.
Thanks, coach.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I'm going to run later, but like today's an endurance day. I got up feeling good. Marissa's going to work out. So I was like, all right, 45 minutes. We're going to go zone 2 on the rower and the bike. Chill. 3 minutes on, 3 minutes off for 45 minutes. And like, a lot of CrossFitters, like I have aerobic limitation. We all know that. I've talked about it, but like a lot of CrossFitters would be like, that's it. Like high level people could do that session. And then later in the day, let's say they do gymnastics work or gymnastics strength, or they go out for a run because they're so limited, and that's it. And they literally will work out 90 minutes. Cause let's say they do 45 minutes in the morning, 45 minutes in the evening. I think a lot of high level athletes would lose their minds if you gave them that. Because I don't give people that because they will lose their minds, and I don't want to deal with that. Like I don't want to deal with I need more training. I need more. It's like, you don't, but here you go. Because I don't want to go down this road of mental health because I get it, but people will claim like, oh, I need it for my mental health.
Right.
How about meditate for an hour? The number of people I've told that to in response of meditation, I've told probably 20 people in the last like 2 weeks that you should meditate. You should spend time meditating.
That's a lot of people.
Yeah, because everyone's like, I just want to train more. I want to exercise.
Right,
and this is like, I've told people in the CrossFit gym too. I'm like, you should meditate. You should, instead of spending the extra time training, you should meditate for your mental health and train. I'm not saying don't train at all. Just this extra training you want to do to get away from your problems or whatever and feel good. You should probably just meditate for 45 minutes. Hands down. You know what? That's not a controversial statement because I'm giving you a solution to the mental health problem that I respect. You should train, use that, and meditate or go to therapy or talk to your friend that is knowledgeable on how to help you work through your problems, not enable you in your problems, and get better. That's fine. Like you clearly need something, and I just gave you a solution. So I like it.
Yeah.
I don't want to be controversial. I want to be helpful. But yeah, so like the off season idea of like, I got to do more. No, you got to do more specifically of what you're bad at. And you got to figure that out. So like the first 40 minutes of this call, we told you how you can discover kind of what you're bad at, use the open quarters, self-evaluation, objective evaluation, use your coach, evaluate that. Understand that if you want to play this game, even at a hobbyistic level, open and quarters is the way to measure yourself. And every year, not just 1 year, every year, start building that context, work on training programs from there, knowing that whether it's, Legends is now the games, but historically when it was Legends, MFC, the Pit, Wadapalooza, NCC, Iron Games, TFX, like name them, all the ones in Canada, all the ones in Europe, wherever you're going to go and compete in CrossFit, they're all looking towards the people in charge, the CrossFit Games, the CrossFit Open, the semifinals, the quarterfinals. And they just take those ideas and then expand on them with their own bias and build these training, like these tests. So to be like, oh, I want to get good at blah, blah, I want to do this other thing. It's like, well, you should focus on the main thing. The main thing is open and quarters. And then if you make it past quarters, semifinals. And that's how you want to build, this hobby or professional training program within the space and the sport, and then go from there and use the other stuff to fill in the gaps.
Yeah.
But the main meat and potatoes of, evaluation of training and focus of training should be open quarters, especially now because David and company are going to make it matter.
Yeah.
And if it matters and you got to get to 25% to get to quarters and you didn't do so well in the open, well, you need to evaluate that. Well, and then use off season to train it.
Yeah. Well, I feel like even maybe soon, I mean, they're already talking about how like quarters is going to be is a continuation of the open, right? So I wouldn't be surprised if next year they try a format like that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's pretty good. But yeah, so like that was pretty good. Anyone in the chat have any questions about variation in training? If anybody's mad about doing meditation,
let Todd know now, right now.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I spent a long time doing meditation.
Yeah.
And working on it. So
I mean, I love training, but I also love rest days. I don't know.
I like doing half-ass training days like I did today. Yeah. It's not half-ass. It was full-ass. Okay.
Yeah. That's good. That's good.
No one. We got 6 watchers though. So that's cool.
Nice. What happened to Harley today?
Dude, come on. Give him a break.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah. They competed.
That's true. That's true.
What did you guys think of the workouts overall for a team? And quarters is coming up. I don't think they're gonna. Well, Dave alluded to them being different. I don't think they're gonna be that different.
I don't think so either. I mean,
I don't think it'd be different structure. Obviously, the movement selections are going to be different, but I think they're still going to
are
be
they? I feel like they're going to be very similar
really.
to.
Oh, here we go. Taking bets.
I
What do you
don't
think, Tyler?
I think they're going to be similar.
I think they'll be fairly similar. I like them though. I like the team workouts. I thought they were. I liked that it was definitely a step up from the Open, but it's not semis, right? So like back when it was like 5 tests during the Open and then regionals, like you had more tests to kind of weed out the higher level ones. So now that it's down to 3, that's kind of what quarters is doing before semis. So I really like them. I thought they're just CrossFit. I like them.
Yeah, they were good. Charlie, meditation is good. Oh, Charlie, I'm gonna text you later. Meditation is good. Yeah, I like the quarter final workouts because of 2 things. Well, the team, I mean, we're not going to know for the individuals yet what they're going to be like, but if the structure is the same, I love the 2-minute on, 2-minute off for 20 minutes. I love that type of training. I think CrossFit in general could benefit from a lot more of that type of training in general. I think that's a very good way to train. So I like that for that aspect. It was fun. I love the low number of burpee over the bar, and the front squat and the loading was very correct for those athletes to do really well. But I like the low number because you knew that it was going to be about a minute, 50 seconds to a minute, or slightly less by a few seconds. And then you'd have a minute at the ring muscle ups, and that gave teams a really good opportunity to express their capacity in ring muscle ups. Because if you've ever try to do ring muscle ups for a minute, I mean, even if you're going unbroken, the longest you're going to be on those rings for a pretty good set is about 23 to 32 seconds. And that'd be like a set of 15 to 18 reps. So like that was cool because you knew that they would only go about that long. They'd come off, and then either the female or the male would go depending on, and then they get a rest. And it was cool to watch. The second workout being the dumbbell snatch toe to bar, which is a classic variation of a lot of different workouts. I mean, Masters 2022 was it quarterfinals, had the 3 rounds of 20 dumbbell snatches, 20 toes to bar at the same loading dumbbell. They've done dumbbell, they did toe to bar, dumbbell snatches, box jump, rope climb, box jump, dumbbell snatch, toe to bar for the 2022 team workout. So it's a combo that happens a lot. There are other dumbbell snatch, toe to bar workouts in the earlier years. So
I was going to say, what I really liked about it was they still had to express a lot of strength. And I know we talk a lot about like in quarters or the Open, it's like doing that 1 RM test, right? And everyone doesn't like it because it really skews the leaderboard. And not that I disagree with that, but like I think people looking at the quarters workouts and they're like, there's no heavy barbell, there's no whatever, right? And it's like looking at the shoulder to overhead deadlift workout, which I guess was kind of heavy, but like they had to, for the amount of volume that they were doing, they have to be strong AF, right?
Yeah,
like
you can't be weak and get a lot of volume.
And
on that
so it's
workout.
like the stronger athletes are going to prevail in that workout for sure. And even, to Todd's point with the front squat, it's like those strong athletes are going to prevail in that, right? They still have to have the skills and all that stuff, but like they didn't have to actually test a 1 RM. And and it's getting those athletes who are strong and then are also enduring, right? And can do that stuff. So that's what I thought was really cool about it. And I think that that's what we're going to see in the individual and in the age group.
It's the same workouts, but
that's what I'm saying. Like, I think it's going to be a similar style. Like,
okay.
they're probably not going to have a 1 RM, but they're going to have loading where you're going to have to be strong and enduring to get through.
Yeah. I mean, a foundation of strength backed by metabolic conditioning, which like when you look at CrossFit as a whole, I think that's what people forget. It's like the pyramid. It's like, nutrition is the base, then metabolic conditioning, then gymnastics, then weightlifting and throwing, and then sport. So like everybody who's like, I want a heavier barbell, I want it to be this, I want it to be that. I think those people have always been misguided in their comments and statements because it's the friggin' 4th thing on the pyramid. Like throwing and weightlifting are at the top, like near the most narrow section. And I do know that like weightlifting, gymnastics, and monostructural in the Venn diagram they do has its equal circle. But the thing is, like weightlifting, it could be dumbbells, it could be wall balls, like it's external object on the body, and they just coin it as weightlifting. And I think that's where the misunderstanding does come from for often for people. Like weightlifting could even, I could argue weightlifting, and I think, I mean, it'd be a hard argument, but Murph with the vest, the push-ups and the pull-ups, and the squats, you could argue that that's in the weightlifting category. It'd be a hard argument. It's a real big reach, but because there's an external object on you and it's loaded, I think CrossFit would say, yeah, that's, it's not necessarily gymnastics. It's in that middle portion where the Venn diagram overlaps of like weightlifting and gymnastics. But if you got it heavier, let's say you went 50-pound ruck because you're a freaking psychopath, I would say that that's more of a weightlifting movement than it is a gymnastics movement.
Right.
It's a strength gymnastics movement biased towards the strength or weight lifting because you're lifting those weights. If you do a strict pull-up, loaded strict pull-up, that's a weightlifting movement. It's a gymnastics based movement backed by you're moving an external load, pulling it over the bar. So it's just a different style. I think that's also a problem we have, is like people don't understand those differences and the nuance of those things. Because I'm not 100% correct in saying it's a weightlifting movement. I know that there's an argument to be had there, but you could have that argument. It'd be easy to have that argument and both be right. But you'd have to concede and go, yeah, there's an external load. And they say in level 1 manual, level 2 manual, and in the CrossFit Journal that moving an external load is classified as a weightlifting movement. So therefore, same thing with like double unders. People say it's gymnastics. Some people say it's monostructural. I would argue it's monostructural, but like they do encompass both those things. But I would say running is also gymnastics, because like running is a bodyweight movement that's, you have to get good form and technique and everything else. And then the jumping aspect of it could be a gymnastics movement. So you could have those arguments too. And neither would be right or wrong. It's just up for conversation and understanding for a bigger scope of, what's going on. So, yeah, I mean, those team workouts, I love at the end of the day that it was well balanced with the pairings, because going male, female on the front squat ring muscle was really good. Because it did slow, like even if you had a Haas man on ring muscle ups, it didn't matter because the time. So that's the elegancy of it. The time that you had to do and the repetitions of the burpees and the front squats, they knew it would give you this amount of time. And they know that men will only be on the rings for this amount of time and women average will be on the rings about this amount of time. And so they build those workouts that way. If you don't think that they know that, they know it. They know that that's the average and what's going on, and they test these things. And then the second workout, having all 4 dumbbell snatch was cool because you could have a limitation on somebody's strength and strength endurance and low back endurance on that and have to stop, or their cardiovascular respiratory system is low and they'd have to stop and they slow the whole team down. I did like it how you could break off and only go 2 pairs and 2 pairs on total bar, and then they came back together as 4. I like things like that for teams, especially in the gymnastics, because like it gets too bottlenecky. I'm fine with it. I don't know why, but you know why? Because you can always pick up a dumbbell. It's really hard if you go to failure with like handstand push-ups, chest to bar, toes to bar, to like then the whole team's got to do singles and it just looks bad. I just don't like that aspect of it. It would be fine to do, but breaking it down to 2 and only having 2 synchro, it makes it go faster. It keeps the intensity high and you don't create any bottlenecks. And then you come back to the dumbbell. So that was really good. And you could choose those pairings, and they could be different pairings every time you went to the total bar too. So that like was a kind of cool, like we didn't do that for the team we had, but like if you had a team where like someone starts dying and you want to put them over here or over there, like you could move them around like on the fly, which is kind of adds strategy to stuff, I guess. And then the row wall ball handstand push-up workout, that was really cool because you just watch maximum capacity at a really high level. Like you're watching people row at men at a 140, 138, both rows. Like, so they're doing 1,000 meters. I know it's broken up and they get a little bit of rest, but like you watch them row that hard. And even the females, you watch them row that hard right into the wall balls, unbroken on the wall balls. Then the handstand push-ups are shared, which gives you a little bit of rest to give you the opportunity to like tag out and like And then when they come back in, same thing. Like you got to go again. And
Yeah.
it's really cool to watch, like, because you tell somebody, you know, in GPP class or even an athlete who's developing, like, hey, you got to do those 50 wall balls unbroken. Their eyes are like, "Whoa."
Right.
And then you watch these people just like do it.
Yeah.
And you're like, cool, that's what's possible. Cause it, and then I think about like, it is possible for anyone who is strong enough, generally fit to do 50 wall balls unbroken.
Yeah.
And you should probably start trying to do that. Like for funsies, like who cares if your workout, let's say the workout has 50 wall balls in the middle or at the beginning or whatever, try to do it unbroken. Like, and
Yeah.
then you're like, yeah, but I gotta stand there for a minute till I go to the next thing. Who cares? We want to talk about stimulus and adaptation. You just got that stimulus of doing 50 wall balls and the exposure and experience of doing 50 wall balls unbroken, which is going to push all the other wall ball sets, whether it's
Right.
30, 20, 10, 15, 25. Like you now just pushed your ceiling up by trying that 50 unbroken.
Yeah.
And then, you know, like these team athletes are out there doing it, and not just like one team, all the teams.
I think
So
I think the problem is too, especially with like GPP, right? It's like they're trying to game it too much, right? Instead of like trying to get more, like what you're saying, like trying to like use those as opportunities to push out like either their capacity or mentally, like can I do that, right? And I think we've said this before, like wall balls is like a movement where you probably can go a really long time. It's usually your mind that's like, I don't want to do this anymore. And then you're stopping, right? So it's like, I think it's something that there's not like a huge skill limiter. I mean, there is an aerobic limiter for sure, but usually it's like me personally, I mean, I know I'm like more trained, but like, it's like, it's like, can I do another 10? I don't really want to, but I can. I know I can do it if I'm making that choice, right? So it's like, I think that even just with not as trained athletes, it's like, can I do 5 more when I'm like, okay, I want to stop at 20. Can I do 5 more? Maybe it's not 50, but it's like constantly making those choices of like, can I push out what I really want to do and knowing that I probably can.
yeah, I mean, I've watched people do 200 unbroken wall balls.
Yeah.
So like,
yeah,
whatever.
well,
man.
yeah.
Tyler's shaking his head.
Yeah.
I mean, it's,
That's
you see,
stupid, man.
Well, Paige just did that like a couple weeks
Yeah.
ago. You had something, it was like some work and it was like into unbroken wall balls.
don't
and
give
she-
out her metrics.
Oh, well, she did a lot.
The
I'll just say that. She did a lot. And
Jeez
then she was
Louise.
like, yeah, that was kind of stupid, but Tanner told me I couldn't do it. So I said, I'm
Yeah.
going to do it. And she did it.
Yeah, there are people who can do it. Yeah, and then the final workout, you know, like Heather was alluding to, the deadlifts at 315 for men, 205 for ladies, and then shoulder overhead 125, 185. Like you have to be strong to get enough reps. So like that was the strength test. I think that was a valid strength test. I think that is the type of strength test we need to see in CrossFit. I'm sick and tired of the 1RMs because it skews the leaderboard, especially with a large pool of people. It's not getting broad times of mold demand. So like it's going against, you know, they're like, oh, if you're going to die by this on the hill of unknown and unknowable and not give affiliate owners enough warning for the workouts, what they are, and like not create these systems where people use the world timer on the internet in their video, or you give them a passcode so that people aren't doing these workouts ahead of time. Because you're like, oh, we don't want to give them out 2 weeks because people will do them. Let people do them. That's fine. You could give them out 2 weeks ahead and make sure we use a passcode. And if you don't use the passcode in your video, at the beginning of the video, your video is invalid. I don't care. Like just zero them and make it real and then do that. But because of that, like they don't, where was I going with that?
I don't know.
I just hate, oh yes, that's what I mean. I hate that they're saying like the unknown and knowable and they stick so hard to that. Then why are you doing this thing where you create a strength test or single 1RM that skews the leaderboard where somebody who can't do 7 minutes of burpees relative to somebody else, and like they're just shooting up the leaderboard because they can clean and jerk 400 pounds, but they got 5 burpees on 7 minutes of burpees and somebody else gets 115 and their clean and jerk is 275.
Right.
That person is fitter than the person who did the 400-pound clean and jerk
Yeah.
by the definition of fitness and CrossFit.
Right.
And you're letting your competition that's supposed to crown the fittest by your definition move forward on a leaderboard further than somebody who is more balanced across broad times and mold demands. It makes me so angry.
Yeah.
And then you're going to die on the hill of unknown and unknowable. Well, then you got to die on the hill of all of it.
Yeah.
Like it's just, you can't pick and choose.
I feel like they're getting away from it though.
They are.
I think,
That's what
I
I
think they're
hope.
starting to realize that.
And
too.
I hope that's why these are the strength tests. And everybody who's listening to this, who watches this later and is still watching this, and you like, you hear it. That we don't need 1 RMs. I don't care about your ego.
Yeah.
Do
Well,
it
I
in
mean,
your gym and have a good
You were
time.
even talking about when you were talking about weightlifters and powerlifters and stuff like that, and how they're not doing a lot of intensity work, right? Like you have those people that are in a CrossFit gym or in a CrossFit setting, right? They're not actually training CrossFit, but they're like, oh, I'm just going to come in and do this, right?
I'm gonna sign up for $20.
Right. And they're probably athletes that have no intention of even doing anything, which is crazy, right?
Yeah. And I don't want to have those people not sign up. I just want it to be
right.
I want this stage and the semifinal stages to be more in line with the methodology that they have set forth.
Sure.
That's my argument.
Right.
I don't care. Like in the open, it doesn't matter right now.
Right.
As far as like getting forward, your top 25% is relatively easy to get into. So if they had a 1 RM lift, I wouldn't care. But if they do it in quarters because they're narrowing the people that qualify, that would make me mad. It's like you went from 25%, which for women in the East is like 6,000 women. You can go from like 6,000 women to 40, and you're going to test a 1 rep max snatch.
Yeah.
No, thank you.
I don't think they're going to do it, but
no, I'm just saying like they have in the past. So historical years, 120 women go to semifinals that they had in 2021, 4 rep max front squat.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that was good for me.
Someone like Alex Parker, who's been to the CrossFit Games, and she's a good example because I can go on the leaderboard. You can go look. 4 out of the 5 workouts, she beats people, a lot of people. But because that one workout, she doesn't go to semifinals. My wife, 4 out of 5 workouts, smashes people points wise. But because the CrossFit is so tight now, the margins of scoring is so tight that 4 rep max front squat didn't help her. She got 50th in the world in the wall ball row workout. Didn't go to semifinals because of the front squat.
Yeah.
Wall ball rowing, CrossFit, doesn't go to semifinals because of a 4 rep max front squat. And like, granted, cool. We got to work on our front squat, right? We got to get stronger. That's fine. That's fair. We take that and we get better. But like, really?
Yeah.
That's not broad times and multiple domains. That's what makes me mad. And I have a bias because it happened to my wife, happened to some other athletes that I've coached that I know. And I just don't think they got the best people for that event. And that's why you have so many of these talk shows in CrossFit talking about getting the right people to the event, because historically they have had problems getting the right people to the event.
Yeah.
Because you've missed out. Like even now, like they talk about it with squeezing it down to 40. Like Yona Koski would have not gotten to the CrossFit Games. Bethany Shepard would not have made it to semifinals because she was 56th for the West and then qualifies for the CrossFit Games. So you won't have Bethany Shepard in the CrossFit Games because she didn't do as well in quarters to semifinals as she needs to do this year.
Yeah.
Right. And there's going to be examples of that across the board. So the tests have to be, I think the team tests that they had are perfect in nature. So if they do that for the individuals and the master or age groups, individuals and age groups, it's going to be perfect.
Yeah.
And they'll do a great job.
Yeah.
But if you get anything less than that, we're going to have problems.
Well, I think that it's pointing in that direction. So hopefully it'll be similar.
I guess I'm more cynical about this than you.
Yeah, you must be. You're more
jaded. I don't have the faith in them, man. They're going to mess it up.
I don't know. I just don't see it being that different.
It's one of those things where you're like, you had one job.
Yeah. Yeah. But
have you ever rode a workout before? What the heck? No, I don't want to be that critical. They did a great job on the teams, and I'm gonna be with Heather.
Yeah.
They're gonna do a great job for the individuals.
Yeah.
So it was cool.
It's not gonna
cool, guys. That was a lot today.
Yeah.
120. I was hoping we go 1.5 hours. How many people, if you watched it this far and you're on YouTube,
I'm very impressed.
Do me a favor and comment your timestamp. Right now it's 1 hour and 19 minutes and 23 seconds. So if go ahead and put 119, comment on the YouTube, that would help. If you are not subscribed, please subscribe to the channel because I'm getting a phone call. We ran out of our time with Do Not Disturb. And then, yeah, that was good. Everyone should listen to this. If you are training with us after you are out of your season of competition, think about what we talked about today. Objective and subjective evaluation for yourself, then have a conversation with the coach. We probably already know what we think about you. We've been watching you all year and have our own bias or understanding, and then pair those two ideas together and build the off-season training program. And if you do that, buy into it because you are part of that process, and you don't necessarily need to know all the ins and outs of the process because you've said, hey, I'm bad. Like in my evaluation, I'm bad at front squats at high volumes at a moderate to heavy load, and I would like to try German volume training. Then the coach gives you the feedback, but either way, you're going in that direction of building out that deficiency. And you could do that for a lot of deficiencies. I recommend only picking 3 because, and even sometimes only 2, depending on what they are. If you have a straight aerobic deficiency, you might only be able to work on one other thing because of the time it takes to train. Or if you have a strength, like an absolute strength deficiency, you may only be able to work on one other thing because it takes so much time to build that out. But if you're like pretty high level, you could get up to like 3 different limitations in the off season. That's another crazy. We could talk about this on how long it takes to become a good CrossFitter and why. And that like you literally are probably only working on 3 things in the off season. And that's why it takes a couple of years, you know, unless you're just like an easy responder and you're adapting to everything. But like it could take a couple of years because if you're working on 3 things every off season, it could take 3-4 years before you fix those things. And then move on to whatever the goal is.
Yeah. That could be for next week.
All right. Next week, talk about how long it takes to adapt and train. We should look up adaptation numbers, some programs from people who've adapted.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Like, subscribe, comment. It helps build the channel. There are a lot of people who can't find these videos. And it's because we're just not popular. You know, we got 2 viewers right now.
Nice.
And that's how YouTube works. And
cool.
that's okay. All right. Bye.